Was he a sports fanatic?
He likes sports, but
he's more interested in Michael right now. He goes, Theresa, this is so cool. I go, I know, isn't this amazing?
We high five. There you go, Dad. That's what I'm talking about.
Isn't it amazing?
Does he have anything to say to me?
I know, apparently not.
How do self-proclaimed mediums read people? Why do so many people believe in these readings? And how do we identify deceptive language? These are the questions this video will answer. Occam's razor is an academic tool for shaving off unlikely explanations. When faced with two different explanations for the same phenomenon, the simplest explanation is most likely to be correct. And as I'll show, there are natural, much too natural explanations for what mediums do. Explanations that make the far-fetched, supernatural ones null and void. For simplicity's sake, I'll use the self-aggrandizing term medium. However, that doesn't mean I acknowledge the profession. Time to get the party started.
Are there any spirits coming through right now?
Oh, there's always spirit.
Okay.
I don't know did somebody lose their husband over here? Who lost the husband? Because this is before, okay. Because when I was standing over here, this is where I got confused when I went with the younger male before with the husband, because I heard husband over there, and I knew I was over here. So, and I had switched.
The first thing to note about mediums is their self-protective language. Such language is characterized by convenient apologies such as Theresa's confusion, but also generic questions, making sure that someone in the audience will respond. As part of the linguistic self-defense, mediums prefer dichotomy questions, yes or no, to presupposition questions, how, what, when, where, why. Because it wouldn't look good if they asked, when did your sister pass away? And the relative responded, I don't have a sister.
Okay, so unfortunately you lost your husband. Your husband stepped on. Was your husband ill prior to his passing? Because what happens is, people say, oh, of course he was ill. But you know what I've learned is being a medium, people leave the physical world in many different ways. And the first thing that your husband said was that he wanted you to know how much he appreciated every unselfish thing you did for him. He says, I wish I told you that more here in the physical world.
Sounds like Theresa's more concerned with anticipating objections in order to save face than communicating with the spirit world.
People say, oh, of course he was ill. But you know what I've learned is being a medium, people leave the physical world in many different ways.
Theresa's suspiciously high level of self-awareness continues throughout these readings. Theresa instructs the audience to think that this wasn't just a lucky guess. However, how did she guess it? Did she ask, what did you do when your husband was sick? No, she asked a dichotomy question to get the relevant information, so she could then elaborate with generic messages from the spirit world.
Your husband ill prior to his passing, he wanted you to know how much he appreciated every unselfish thing you did for him.
Prior to asking the dichotomy question, she didn't know that the relative's husband was ill. Now she's suddenly able to quote him, assertively at that.
And you know what he just said to? Oh, I think your husband, he's funny. He goes, because I like them to communicate with the personality. He goes, you know what? I could be a bit stubborn, Theresa. I go, oh, really?
What happens when mediums try a presupposition question and fail?
Now, what was with the oatmeal? Or did you used to make him eat a certain food or something? Okay, this is my meaning. See, my meaning in signs and symbols, it doesn't mean that they're incorrect. It means that it might just have a different meaning for you.
This level of linguistic self-defense is one of the key signs of deceptive language. The quick follow-up question in form of a dichotomy has two functions: to try and make people forget the specific presupposition question about oatmeal, and grant herself leeway by widening the scope of what this food could be.
Now, what was with the oatmeal? Or did you used to make him eat a certain food or something?
The so-called simples that mediums refer to are tools to get the relative to make up the thing that this could be a symbol of. That's why I call this technique filling the frame. The medium provides the frame and the relative fills it. However, when the relative isn't able to fill it because they can't recognize the symbol, mediums end up in the following embarrassing situation, with lots and lots of probing to see if anything resonates with the relative.
So what happened is I saw chocolate all around his face. That's my symbol for somebody was either diabetic or they were not allowed to eat certain foods here in the physical world. So whatever it was that he was not allowed to have, because he just now showed me himself full face, rosy cheeks, that's my symbol for where someone's physical appearance has changed. So whatever it was that he was not able to prior to his departure, he left with the physical body and he's able to do on the other side. Now I want to talk about who's wearing the picture of someone.
I don't know why, but the phrase, throw it against the wall and see what sticks, comes to mind. Maybe it's a symbol of something. and so confusing. After mentioning the chocolate, Theresa pauses.
Certain foods here in the physical world. So whatever it was that he...
When this pause turns out not to be the great recognition point that it was meant to be, she tries a new approach, which all of a sudden isn't limited to food.
Because he just now showed me himself full face, rosy cheeks. So whatever it was that he was not able to prior to his departure.
It's strange how she didn't mention the rosy cheeks along with the chocolate around his mouth. It's almost as if she just mentions more and more stuff when she doesn't hear acknowledgement tokens from the relative. I guess there's nothing else to do but move on to a more cooperative relative, and that's exactly what Theresa does, and unapologetically at that, something that she and other mediums have a habit of doing.
Okay, your father has passed, okay. All right, go ahead, John.
Is that where the anchor comes in?
He was in the military.
Okay, but there's an anchor that they're showing me, so that to me would mean that the word anchor has a meaning, like somebody lived on Anchor Street, where they have an anchor connection that comes up with them. So there's got to be something about the word anchor connected to your families that they want me to bring up. And then somebody lost a child to you guys. Do you know that? There's a little girl in that section. I think she was either in a vehicle accident or somebody was a younger female passed in a car accident right where you're standing.
Now I want to talk about who's wearing the picture of someone. Or there's like a bunch, feel like someone has like a bunch of like charms or like a bunch of articles wearing around your neck.
Yes, because it's not like she's had more than enough time to see someone who fits that description.
But are they people that have departed? No. They have to be people that are departed. Is your mom passed? Okay.
I guess the spirit world didn't give her that piece of information. Well, you can't have it all.
So just know that your mom is not, because I said, well, then it has to be someone that passed. She says, well, that's not fair. She said, all you asked was for a good validation that my daughter would know that it was me. So I said, well, usually people wear things that she goes, well, that's not fair. So now your mother's arguing with me and telling me that my signs and symbols aren't fair.
How strange that the relative's mother said it was good validation. That sounds like something Theresa could have said. Wait. It's convenient how the relative's mother says that Theresa's symbols aren't fair, right after another audience member failed to recognize one of these symbols. You know, the oatmeal, chocolate, and rosy cheeks. This is a convenient way for Theresa to anticipate objections for self-protective reasons.
But would that be your mother making her presence known?
Isn't Theresa supposed to know these things? Anything to avoid another compromising presupposition question, I guess.
Now, what was with the oatmeal? She wants to make sure that you know that she is still with you. She wants to talk about her engagement ring. Do you have the ring? Did you change the ring or give it to someone else?
We changed the ring.
Perfect. Know that is your mother's way of acknowledging that she supports the choice and decision of the changing of the ring.
Theresa's able to quote the deceased loved one when it comes to generic statements that sound like they come straight from rom-coms, but somehow she doesn't know about the status of this engagement ring. It's more than suspicious that she's specific about things that no one can fact-check, but not about things that can easily be negated by the relative and thus make her look bad. Theresa makes sure to list so many alternatives that nothing can go wrong this time.
Do you have the ring? Did you change the ring or give it to someone else?
But wait, how did she know about the engagement ring? Isn't that proof that she has supernatural abilities? I just don't see how she could have known. And next, it's time for more probing, more of the filling the frame technique to let the relative do the interpretation for her, at least until things go wrong. Again.
Who's being tested for other things?
For the disease?
Yes, or for anything. I feel like that now perfect. Because I keep feeling like there's something about testing, and he's talking about testing, and he says everything is going to be fine. I'm going to say this, and I don't know how to interpret it, so you're going to have to interpret on how it fits. I feel like, yes, things are genetic. But I feel like with this, it was almost like a freaky thing that happened or that he contracted. Does that make sense? Or do you understand that?
Well,
who passed from the chest? They just labored my breathing.
Saved by the breathing. When probing, Theresa uses extreme hedging language.
I feel like, because I keep feeling like this, and I don't know how, I feel like
somehow the deceased loved ones are only assertive when it comes to generic messages. Strangely enough, they don't give clear messages when it comes to their diseases and conditions.
And he says, everything is going to be fine.
Hedges grant deceptive subjects leeway to modify or retract their statement at a later point, and is a key feature of deceptive language. And the hedges occur in suspicious parts of the conversations, the parts where she'll lose face if she's being too assertive. Theresa grants herself leeway by presupposing that the disease or condition was both genetic and a freaky thing that happened.
I feel like, yes, things are genetic.
What things? This language is as distancing and generic as it gets, almost as if she isn't speaking to anyone from the spirit world.
Does that make sense? Or do you understand that?
Well,
Who passed from the chest? They just labored my breathing.
People with something to hide don't have time to politely wait for the other person to answer. Once again, she gives two options, in the form of self-protective dichotomy questions, of course.
Does that make sense? Or do you understand that?
Do you understand that? Opens for an even more personal interpretation. Theresa wears both belt and braces and still fails.
well,
Who passed from the chest? They just labored my breathing. Who passed from the chest? I just got a blow to the chest and I couldn't breathe for like a second. Because they're trying to make their presence known.
Maybe it happened because the relative wasn't being cooperative. But yes, it sounds a lot more realistic that another spirit did this at the most convenient time possible.
Who died right in front of someone?
Right over here.
Okay. And who's this?
Here you go.
Died right in front of. This does not mean that this is not for you. I'm just piggybacking. I just go with the stronger energy that's going to communicate.
And yet, the time she's gone with this stronger energy hasn't been able to communicate for very long. Maybe it's not such a strong energy after all. I don't know why though. Could it be because the energy isn't there?
So your dad died right in front of you, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes, because the relative just said that. This is another thing mediums rely on, relatives providing them with too much information. Here, the relative says it was her dad, so Theresa doesn't have to, revealingly, probe for that piece of information.
He wants you to know that he needs you to release any negative emotion, only if, should've, could've, would've, that my dad would still be here. Because he showed me my symbol for, even if someone knew CPR, it's almost like, oh my God, I save everyone's life, I could do CPR, but I couldn't save my own dad. It wasn't your responsibility to save him.
Bringing up the symbol has two purposes. One, to increase the likelihood that the relative will recognize CPR literally, that CPR was literally involved in this situation. Two, by calling it a symbol, she protects herself from having to conclude that CPR was involved, and thus lose face in case it wasn't.
But your dad, he's a great guy. Was he a sports fanatic?
He likes sports, but
Because he's more interested in Michael right now. He goes, Theresa, this is so cool. I go, I know, isn't this amazing?
We high five. There you go, Dad. That's what I'm talking about.
Isn't it amazing?
Does he have anything to say? Does he have anything to say to me?
I know, apparently not. Apparently he doesn't know this model stuff here because he's just interested.
Theresa's intentionally exaggerated speech rate, interruptions, and focus shift almost cover up what the relative actually said.
He likes sports, but
He's more interested.
That's not a firm yes at all. Also, why does Theresa even have to ask?
Was he a sports fanatic?
Isn't the spirit supposed to tell her these things? I mean, they're pretty specific about other things.
He says, I need you to release this burden that you carry. He goes, Theresa, this is so cool. I go, I know, isn't it? He goes.
This is a revealing self-repair. The first thing on Theresa's mind, apparently, is that this is something she says, and then she makes a pronoun shift.
He goes.
Thus, Theresa's spontaneous pronoun usage points to the same conclusion that her tactics also point to, that her dialogue with the spirits is made up. The next excerpt highlights this point.
But see, I always like spirit to give a message of personality, of who they were, again, to really validate that it is them, because I get what I do is hard to understand or embrace. So, and anyone can say, I want you to release that.
She literally says she likes the spirit to give a message of personality, suggesting that the spirits do whatever she wants them to do, because they're made up. And what message of personality is she referring to? The relative didn't give a firm yes at all. On the contrary, she was about to modify her acknowledgement token when Theresa conveniently interrupted her.
So, and anyone can say, I want you to release that.
Yes, anyone can say that, and Theresa obviously knows that, since it's on her mind. I wonder why though. It couldn't be because she's the anyone she refers to, could it? Looking like someone who's anxious to get out of this situation.
And he says, he goes, isn't this cool? I go, yeah. He goes, I get to see someone famous. And I'm like, what about talking to your daughter? Is it your birthday or is it your birthday or
Theresa's laughter is very sincere.
is it your birthday or a special celebration that is coming up or just passed?
That could be any family member's birthday, depending on how you define coming up or just passed.
My mother-in-law's birthday just passed.
Is that you? Oh, and you're hello! She's wearing the New York Giants shirt. I love it.
I love it too. There's nothing like focus shift to try and distract from the fact that she still hasn't said anything specific, and obviously isn't interested in an actual conversation with a relative. Conversations mean more guesses. More guesses lead to more wrong guesses, and wrong guesses are compromising.
Who lost the daughter? Who passed from the brain, aneurysm, brain tumor, Alzheimer, or dementia? I'm right here. Who's that?
Once again, it's time to mention all the alternatives she can think of, which is totally reliable.
Should she have Alzheimer's or a dementia? Okay, so no, this is her way of acknowledging. Now, were you very young when she was sick?
This is the look of someone who wants someone else to say yes to a dichotomy question. Also, the relative is young, so how could she not have been young when it happened? In the following, something strange happens. Theresa makes a correct guess. So could that mean that she has supernatural abilities after all?
And every time that you sat there
Thank you.
and held her hand,
I did.
and you treated her as if she wasn't sick, is that correct?
Yes.
No, it doesn't mean that she has supernatural abilities, unless party tricks are also supernatural. Theresa's already got the information she needs to guess that the relative was holding the hand of her loved one and treated her loved one as if she wasn't sick. Theresa already knows that the loved one had Alzheimer's or dementia, both conditions that give the relative more than enough time to hold the hand of their loved one at some point. Furthermore, many or most relatives treat their loved ones as though they weren't ill.
She wants to thank you for that. She says, I want to thank you for not making me feel sick. And now you still have an article of her clothing or something that she knitted or crocheted?
Yeah, I have all of her handkerchiefs.
Perfect.
With these alternatives, it's next to impossible that the relative will say no, which is the point.
She wants to thank you for keeping those things that have no monetary value but meant the world to her, or more importantly to you.
A few seconds ago, Theresa had to ask if the relative had kept something from her loved one, and now the audience is supposed to believe that Theresa knows what the relative's loved one thinks about the choice to keep the handkerchiefs, delivered in the form of another rom-com cliché. But Theresa's luck is about to run out, and what does Theresa do when that happens?
Where does the H name come in? Helen, Hank, Harry, someone's last name, or a state? They don't have to be passed, they could be here in the physical world. Who just died? I feel like someone just died like 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago. I feel like who's that?
My mother.
Oh yeah, how could I forget? That's what she does when nothing resonates with the relative. It's totally reliable how the spirits can give Theresa so much information that she can quote them, but somehow they can't give her a name.
I feel like unexpected, but like you were prepared, but you weren't prepared. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Were prepared but weren't prepared. Feel like. Theresa always has her unsophisticated techniques in mind.
Do you feel that you did not get the opportunity to say goodbye to her?
Yes.
She says, I don't want you to feel that way. Please know that everything and anything that you said to her in your own personal thoughts and or prayers, please know that she has heard.
Theresa's playing on a common emotion people have that they didn't get to say goodbye. Needless to say, there's nothing specific about that. And again, it's strange how it's only after Theresa's dichotomy questions that the deceased loved one says exactly what the relative wants to hear. Theresa modifies her fictional message from the spirit world, depending on how the relative answers her initial yes-no question, which in this case should be called a yes question, since no isn't an option. Why do so many people believe in this? Why do people still fall for the dichotomy questions, hedging language and filling the frame technique? Because mediums tell relatives exactly what they want to hear, giving them a false sense of security and false closure. And some people are more impressionable than others. Mediums play on common human emotions, hoping that people's emotions will defeat their logic. But come on, they aren't doing any harm. Firstly, in what other profession would it be okay that a person is lying about their skills? Secondly, no one knows how readings will affect impressionable people. Will they make changes to their lives, potentially negative changes? Will they have a different opinion about their deceased loved one, etc., etc.? People see what's on camera. They don't see what happens when the cameras are turned off. What else are people who are willing to take advantage of other people's grief capable of doing? That's why deception is always wrong, no matter if it appears to benefit someone in the moment, because deception can never benefit anyone in the long run. Which of Theresa's readings in this show is your favorite? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more. Thanks for stopping by.